What's up, heathens? How ya doing? What do you think about the flat earth nonsense? Do you think it should just be ignored? Should I stop doing flat earth Friday? Should I do some kind of other crazy ass thing Friday? Or do we just need to continuously go at all this anti-science shit? I would love to know.
Through the atmosphere in a dome-like shape from the observer's point of view. And every single person on Earth each has their own dome view of the sky above. Let's look at an example. First thing, to understand the idea of the atmospheric dome. I'm not saying that there is a glass dome, I'm not saying anything about an actual physical dome, but here's what I am saying. So let's see how far we can agree before you guys jump off track. So let's see, so far we agree, we are existing, we live here somewhere. I'm assuming we're on the same page. We can see in a circle around us for about 3 miles in radius. If it's very clear, perhaps more. Looking at something very large, a building or maybe a large boat, we can see further. But generally speaking, a 6-foot man can see about 3 miles from his position. If we get up higher, we can see further.
Okay, so I mean, I didn't fact check like how far we can see or whatnot, but let's just go ahead and give them that we can see that far.
Alright, let's look at this observer here and realize that the air in front of us can be a lot like a pane of glass. Then if you added a second pane of glass or a third pane, a fourth pane, eventually it would become harder to see because you have more of this glass. It's just going to add up just like our atmosphere adds up in front of our eyes.
I would like to say that glass is much thicker than atmosphere, especially when you get on up into the higher like atmosphere. It's a lot thinner. He's basically saying that the atmosphere is as thick as glass. Like the density of the atoms in the atmosphere is as dense as glass.
So one could say that seeing further through the air might be more difficult. If we add panes of glass, things get progressively more difficult to see. Notice.
I would also like to say that if you actually had like the thick, like if you had glass end to end to each other, and it, you know, whatever thickness or whatever, using his reasoning, the glass would have to be so thick that you would not be able to see that far in front of you if this was the case.
The red dot here on the back of the 15 panes of glass is more difficult to see than the same red dot at the front. If our observer stands and takes a look at his surroundings, we know we can see in a 360-degree circle around us, and our view is the radius of that circle. Where would the most atmosphere or panes of glass be to our observer? Well, it's at the ground level, the thickest portion of our atmosphere. As we go up, our atmosphere thins out. So here we have the most atmosphere at the Earth level. So knowing where the most is and where the least is, we can come to the conclusion or the realization that we see in a dome-like viewpoint. Since the second most heavy portion of the atmosphere is when we start to look up just a little bit, well, progressively from there we see less and less atmosphere and distortion. This is a dome shape. No, I'm not saying there's a glass dome of any kind. We see through the atmosphere in a dome-like shape from the observer's point of view.
Okay, so every single person within a 3-mile radius of them has their own personal dome-like structure that they observe reality through. Do you really have to special plead this shit so much that you get ridiculous? This is fucking ridiculous.
And every single person on Earth each has their own dome view of the sky above. Let's look at an example. So let's say these two people have a cloud over their heads. Let's say that that cloud is 10,000 feet. It's above each of their heads. Each observer would see the other cloud almost at the horizon. As it went off into the distance, that cloud, even though it's 10,000 feet above his buddy, would be down at the horizon line. They would see something like this.
So basically in this part, he's talking about how clouds appear from one observer to another. And then he's going to try to take us through how it would, quote unquote, actually work on a globe Earth. I think that it's quite disingenuous to automatically assume that your model is correct. You need to first prove your model correct before you can say, see, that's why this picture looks like this.
And of course, the guy looking back would see almost the exact same thing, something like this. And so even though both observers have the cloud 10,000 feet above their heads, they can see the cloud above the other guy at the horizon. It is it.
Well, I mean, I still don't understand, like, how that works exactly. Like, if I see a guy however many miles away over there, which, I mean, just guesstimating, I mean, it looks like there's about, what, 5 maybe of those 3-mile radius, so 30 miles between them. Like, those pictures that he showed had way more than 30 miles, like, in it before you see the clouds starting to go into the horizon line. So I don't even know what he's trying to play at here.
At times indistinguishable from the horizon. They would both see the clouds sloping down in the distance. So if that cloud traveled towards the other guy, the cloud would slope down and get smaller the closer it got to the horizon. Here's a good example of that. You know, that reminds me of another easy observation that should tell you where you live. Real quick timeout. Take a look at this photo. We've all seen clouds like this, right? Well, now take note.
Now he's explaining how light is scattering across the sky and like where the bottoms of the clouds are, and then he's gonna throw us for a loop.
Notice of the dark underside of the clouds. Well, the shaded areas of the clouds, if you lived on a globe, wouldn't it show like this? But we never ever see that.
I have to be quite honest here. I had no fucking clue what the fuck he was trying to point out here. Okay, it bothered me because I knew I was gonna have to do this video and I was trying to figure out what he was telling me, and it just escaped me until today when I saw, when I remembered this meme. I remembered this meme and then I thought, oh yeah, this guy thinks that like you're fucking tall enough to see the clouds literally turn on their sides and go around the earth. Like, he thinks that you're tall enough that the clouds should literally start turning towards the earth in order to curve with the curvature of the earth. And that you should effectively at some point be able to see just completely the flat side of the bottom of it. I mean, that's just fucking ridiculous. It took me forever to figure this one out, but I finally did it, guys. Solved the puzzle. Just call me Sherlock Holmes.
Clearly, the clouds are telling us something. As we can see here, the larger amounts of the shadowed part of the cloud that we can see is closest to us, and as they go away from us, we see less and less of the bottom. Whereas if you were on a globe, you should see more and more of the bottom. I'll let you decide why we don't see what we should if we lived on a ball Earth.
Okay, so basically, Jeranism, I would say that you have a completely wrong idea of how clouds in the atmosphere on a globe Earth would actually work. They would disappear into the horizon. They would disappear all the way out there. You would not see them turn like toward like 90 degrees so that you could see the very bottoms of it. That's not how anything works. But of course, you're coming from the presupposition that the Earth is flat and that this right here is a picture of a flat Earth, and that's why we see things the way that we do.
Now that we understand exactly what the clouds are doing as they go away from us, we can start to understand this idea of the atmospheric dome. That as the cloud goes off in the distance, it is setting in our atmospheric dome. It is not getting closer to the horizon. We know that, but everything we see happens in our personal little dome. Now we can see the sun. As the sun goes away from us, now we understand why the sun sets on a flat Earth.
What the fuck is he even trying to show us right now? I mean, he drew two suns and like it moves over there. Like, I mean, these guys are not that far apart. I don't even know what he's trying to play here because you got, there's 6 miles in diameter each circle. And that looks like, that looks even shorter than the last fucking drawing he had. So, I mean, it's like 30 miles between the two. In 30 miles that way, it is not like still daylight for me or for whoever the fuck's over there. Like it would be a vast difference in distance. He should have a disclaimer that says not drawn to scale.
And also, as the sun's away from the other observer, why it rises on a flat Earth. It is simply the sun eclipsing the atmospheric layer or the cloud layer at the horizon off in the distance.
Okay, so basically he's saying that when the sun is at noon over here, it's actually morning, like to this person. But I mean, like with the distance that he's got drawn here, I don't know, that far away wouldn't be, like it wouldn't be morning. There's just not enough distance here in order for this to make sense. Maybe he should draw it to scale. Maybe he shouldn't have laid out that the circle's 6 miles in diameter, therefore making this entire drawing bullshit.
And it, much like the cloud, never changed their height in the sky in comparison to you. It's just the way we observe it. Okay. So everything that happens above us displays for us in our own personal atmospheric dome.
You know what this reminds me of? You know in Destiny 2, that like shield that you can throw down? I think it's a fucking shield. It's like a shield that protects you from like scientific information. No scientific information can enter my shield. He's got a bubble around him, and it's protecting him from all the science that's going to touch him in the naughty places. And I mean, look at this shit. He's got planes, and I don't even know what the fuck this this chicken pox looking shit is right here. But he's got blue clouds. He's got the moon next to the sun, and then all of this other shit. And it's like, wow. Oh, and then the stars are apparently above the sun. The sun is within our own atmosphere, while the stars are outside our atmosphere.
The sun, the moon, and that's why we don't have the exact positions for either one.
Also, are the purple things lightning? And what if the gray thing is a hot air balloon? What's the other motherfucking thing? Amazon Prime at your door? No. The blue thing. The blue looks like it's carrying a package. I feel like it's Amazon Prime's new shipping method.
Because they're rendered to each of us separately. Rather, the only time that you could really get the measurement of the distance to the sun would be on the equator on the equinox. The same goes for Polaris, where you can only get its distance from the North Pole. And both the distance to Polaris and the distance to the sun on the equinox from the equator come out to the same number. That number is the radius of the Earth.
Okay, so wait a second. Now the sun is within the person's own personal dome, along with the stars and a miniature plane. Yeah, the plane that's smaller than the person. I don't know how the plane is smaller than the person. The person looks like Jiminy Cricket blown up to gigantic proportions. KC said that if that person was Kim Kardashian, her ass would be bigger than the sun. I have to agree.
And you can't be fooled, huh? So the ISS, hot air balloons, helium weather balloons, planes, lightning, all of it, stars too, are included in your atmospheric dome.
In your own personal atmospheric dome. Everybody has a dome that protects them from all the science that's gonna hurt them.
Now, if a plane flies over your head in Boston, someone in Florida can't see it. It's too far. Same goes for Polaris from further than the equator.
Oh, what the fuck
Here we've got
this?
another drawing. It's labeled a few places. We'll look at label letter A. That's the observer showing his radius.
Okay, wait a second. You gotta stay fucking consistent with these goddamn diagrams, Jeranism, okay? I'm sorry. I hate to be pedantic like this, but first off, now you've got Jiminy Cricket sunk down to my reasonable size, but I mean, it's still like this, the circle's still 3 miles, and your other Jiminy Cricket over there was like fucking way bigger than he is now. I don't know what the fuck you got these lines going everywhere for, but I guess you're gonna explain.
It's a view circle. Letter B is the supposed curve of the Earth.
Okay.
C is the actual flat plane of the Earth. D is the apparent concavity of the Earth, and that.
Wait, did he just say the concavity of the Earth? He said the concavity. I don't know where he gets fucking Yeah, the stupid's hurting my brain too. Okay, so B is the curvature of the Earth. In 3 miles, you do not see that much of a curve. I'm sorry, you don't. C is the flat actual Earth, if you notice he said that. D is the apparent concavity of the Earth. Now that's interesting, because I don't know why he thinks it's concave. Now, unless he's talking about mirages.
That's when we see the water rising to eye level. E is the apparent path of the clouds. F is the true cloud level. G is the apparent path of the sun. And H is the actual sun path. The next image that you see, it gives you an idea of what many of these atmospheric domes would look like together.
Okay, so keep in mind, people, each of the atmospheric domes are 3 miles in radius and 6 miles in diameter. So on this, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, for those of you that are like Jeranism and you don't know how to do any kind of fucking math or science, 6 times 8 is 48. So basically, he has a width of 48 miles. Apparently, within 48 miles at noon, if it were noon here for me, then 48 miles in any one direction, it would be goddamn morning. Please let that sink in to know how false this is.
Operating at once. When one guy has noon, well, another guy has 1 o'clock, another guy has 2 o'clock, and so on and so forth around the flat plane. We will look at this in an optic simulation in a moment. I also wanted to bring up another fun flat fact. During a solar eclipse, when the moon crosses the sun, there is an immediate 10-degree Fahrenheit drop in temperature. Well, during sunsets, when the Earth blocks the sun, we don't receive a 10-degree drop in temperature. And why is that? It's exactly the same thing. The sunlight is being blocked by a big body.
Okay, so to explain what he doesn't understand, which you can solve with just a little bit of Google, there is a degree drop when the moon moves in front of the sun and we have that full corona. That's because of the fact that the moon is blocking the sun in that particular area and it's not able to give, heat to that area. So this is tantamount to the difference between midday and like sundown, right? Not all the time, of course, and it's not exactly 10. But the difference is that at sundown, you've already had the sun going down and the rays, the point at which they hit and the angle at which the sunlight rays, they hit the earth is providing less and less heat and energy to the surface. So the temperature goes down, down, and down. And so once the sun actually sets, there's not that big of a degree drop, because it's been decreasing since midday. Well, not midday exactly. I mean, I think 3 p.m. or so where I am is when it's the hottest. But I think that, they just say midday because in general, that's when the sun is highest in the sky or whatever. All I'm saying is that there's a gradual decline in temperature with the sunset, whereas with the solar eclipse, it's an immediate thing. Like, it happens immediately.
Another effect of the atmospheric layer, or blocking, or dome, whatever you want to call it, can be seen when we look at things across water in the distance. Think about it. When you're looking across the water, that's the most atmospheric blockage. As you're looking across, you're going to get some distortion. If you try to look across at a lighthouse,
I love his kindergarten level drawings. Don't you guys? I'm not the best drawer in the world, but I also don't try to draw in my fucking videos.
I have you.